for 3 years now out in Western North Carolina. I am an alumni of the North Carolina Digital Learning Coaching Network through the Friday Institute, where I met and worked with a lot of amazing people. But what I'm doing now, I love to do, and that's working with beginning teachers in their first 3 years. So I'll pass it over to one of my amazing beginning teachers, Cory. Go ahead.
Hey everyone, my name is Cory Lambert, and I have been fortunate and blessed to be working at Cherokee Central Schools for going on 5 years. I attended my undergrad at UNCG in Human Development and Family Studies and received a bachelor's degree with a concentration in birth through kindergarten. This is my first year teaching, so it has been a learning experience to say the least. One thing is for certain, I have definitely enjoyed bonding with my students. When I'm not working, I'm usually reading or spending time with my daughter Jessalyn and my husband Jesse.
All right, so we just wanted to share a little bit of background on how this Friday Institute session was born. So this summer, I had the opportunity to teach rising second graders in a 100% remote environment where they were joining my Google Meet every morning. And my students had been identifying as benefiting from additional reading instructional time by the school district. They were definitely struggling with high frequency words, and I was really losing their engagement reading online. And I'm sure that's no surprise to any teacher who has attempted to do any kind of remote teaching this year. So I began with what I knew would work from my own experience as a classroom teacher and from research supported reading strategies. So I got started with flashcards and Elkonin boxes, and they were highly effective in helping my students. But I also knew that they needed to read real books. And that was a real challenge in a remote setting. But July 18th, National Ice Cream Day, was quickly approaching. And I thought about, wait a minute, I think I can help my students practice high frequency words, build their writing skills, and somehow include ice cream. So I went at it, and that's when I remembered my All About books that I used to do with my own students when I was a classroom teacher. And we wrote books about all kinds of stuff, pets and sharks and lizards and cars. And then they would read them to me, they would read each other's books, they would take turns, and it was just a lot of fun. And it also made me think about the time that I attended a training session with Lisa Cleveland, who is a kindergarten teacher who wrote a book about launching writers' workshop with young writers. And that professional development was actually held here at Cherokee Elementary School about 2 years ago. So I decided I'm going to try to write a class book with my summer school students. And I used what was simple and free. I used Google Slides, and I added photos to the slides having to do with ice cream. And I just had the students on my Google Meet tell me sentences to go with the picture or words. And if you'll flip to the next slide and drop that link in the chat for me, Jacqueline. So here is our All About Ice Cream book. And it was a huge success. Maybe because we were talking about ice cream, and maybe because like they could not have fun because I was so excited. But we talked about ice cream, and then I showed the students the photos, and then they told me their sentence orally over the Google Meet, and then I typed them in. And then we read the book in a shared reading format, which is very powerful reading strategy. Then the students read individually, and then they also read each other's sentences because they each added their own sentences. And because it was a book, I was constantly calling them the authors of the book. And I loved hearing them read individually, which had been a huge struggle for me to get my students to read individually online through Google Meet. And we did a lot of laughing, and we read this book all week. So I did this book for a week. And then I exported the Google slide deck as a PDF so I could upload it to my Class Dojo page. You can upload it to Google Classroom. And then two of my students, I kind of prompted them to write their own All About books at home with paper and crayons and markers, and they did. And of course, I can't end the week without reading the book. And then we had ice cream sundaes at 9:30 in the morning, and it was so much fun on our Google Meet, and it was just so fun. On the slide, I also added some other tools that you may be more familiar with that you could also use to do this same type of online class book. So if you'll flip to the next page, Jacqueline. So I'm gonna fast forward to the fall, and I enrolled myself in the Foundations of Reading course, the MOOC course offered by Friday Institute. I've got several kindergarten through second grade teachers that I coached this year, and I knew that I had some science reading that I needed to learn more about because I have taught upper elementary and middle school. And I learned a lot from the What Works Clearinghouse, and there's a reference to that in this slide deck, and the practice guide for educators that really talks about the science of reading and what strategies work well. Highly recommend that course from the Friday Institute. So Cory and I sat down for a weekly meeting and this fall, and she shared some of the reading challenges that she was having with some of her students. And she also talked to me about how engagement was not going so well, which were things that I had experienced as well. And so I told her a little bit about my success with the All About Ice Cream book. And I asked her, I said, what do you think your students, do you think they'd like it? And so I'm gonna pass it on to Cory so she can tell you what happened next.
So first and foremost, I appreciate Kim for sharing the idea of a class book. I never realized how we could use a class book to teach concepts and make learning memorable for our young readers and writers. Books in general are so important for our little ones. I hope to bring a love of reading to my class, and I think creating a class book was a good start. So far, my class has made 2 books, and both of them have been a big hit. All of our kids seem to really enjoy it. The first book that we created together was called All About Bears. Feel free to click on the link in the chat bar to view our story. So for this activity, we first started out with a class discussion about bears. I would ask questions such as, what color are bears? What do they eat? What can they do? Where do they live? I asked several open-ended questions so the kids were able to respond in more than just a few words. After our short discussion, I told them that we were going to complete an activity. We started out by looking at pictures on the Google slide. On each slide, I had a picture of a bear doing something different, whether it was climbing, looking for food, or even sleeping. My students were asked to create a sentence to go with the picture, and I would type out the sentence. It was amazing to see what they came up with just by looking at a picture, because you could tell that it definitely sparked their imagination. Once each student had the chance to create their own slide, we went through and read the book together, and then we went back a second time, and I gave them the opportunity to read their own sentence. This helped the children become familiar with sounds, words, and early literacy skills. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, so All About President's Day. This is the second book that we created together. Feel free to click on the link in the chat bar to view our book. So our theme this week was President's Day. We talked about the current president, past president, laws, roles, and responsibilities of the president. We even talked about money and how some of our president's faces are displayed on coins and dollars. We quickly reviewed all of the content that we learned that week so that I could refresh their memory of what we learned in our previous lesson. I did this so that we could brainstorm ideas for what we might want our students to say. Then we went through the slides and created our second class book. I personally think both of the books turned out great. The books are especially helpful for helping children gain meaning from what they just read. Since they are just now beginning readers, they are able to focus their attention on what the text means and make connections. I honestly could not tell you how fun and exciting these books were. I was just so proud of each child for trying and giving it their all. And because of how well that went, I put together some books that I'm going to introduce to our class next week now that we are finally in school for in-person learning. So essentially, each child will get to take this blank piece of paper and create their own book. This will give each child the opportunity to be creative and write and draw about whatever they want, whether it's family, friends, or even their pet. So it isn't just any book, it's their book, their writing, and their drawings. They get to be the author and they get to be the illustrator. These young children get to view themselves as writers, and we all know that there is no wrong way to draw something. They will be encouraged to give it their best shot and just go for it. It is definitely a good keepsake and something to look back on years from now. So once we are finished and the books are filled with content, I will display them so that they can share them with their peers and families. We currently use Dojo in the classroom, so I'm thinking that I'm just going to record reading their book and then share it with the class story with their permission, of course. I am hoping that my students will be just as excited as they are proud. Books are a huge accomplishment, and it's great when they are able to show the world what they can do. I think that class books are so amazing. It allows young children to get creative and learn about the writing process, but also building upon their reading and writing skills. This was such an amazing opportunity for our kindergartners because when you only see them online, it's difficult to understand what each child really knows, and reading was one of them. That being said, making class books has definitely been a game changer for my class. I noticed that it increased student engagement, and that's what I've been wanting from them all along. It also helped them improve retention of the information that we had learned that week. The whole experience was so amazing, especially seeing how proud they were. They loved it, and I hope that it will motivate them to want to create more. I also hope that it helps them learn to value books and reading. So again, I appreciate Kim for sharing the idea with me. It was definitely something new, but also turned into something that I will be using for the years to come. So my suggestion is that if you're an educator, just try it, even if it's for 10 to 15 minutes each day. That's all the time that you need. The results are quite impressive, and you will not be disappointed. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you, ladies, so much. And I'm going to drop the PDF of the slides into our chat so you have access to those. And I want to take the opportunity to now open it up for any questions that our viewers might have for either one of you. So feel free to put your question in the chat or open the mic and ask. And I want to thank you ladies so very much for, I know 20 minutes flies by, and for all of you joining us where you are grabbing a bite and doing a million things in your day. We wanted to create an opportunity for you to just get a slice of learning and get some ideas and some inspiration, and be more pleased with what Cory shared. And I do have when the students make the books, did they get a copy of their book? And
I can answer for me and my students. So I did a PDF of the Google slide deck, and so they could pull it up on their parents' phone or any device since it was PDF. And so it was really fun. And I had several parents text back and said that they were grabbing their phone and reading it to everybody that was around because it was, accessible via electronically. Cory, do you want to add to that? Is that similar to what you did with your kindergarten families?
Yeah, so our kids just recently came back to school. And so when we created our class books, what I done was saved it. It was already saved to my Google Drive. I just went in, downloaded it, and shared it to our Google Classroom so every kid had access to it. For our non-remote kids, I had printed it out.
excellent. So lots of versatility with both digital and being able to print it and share it. And we have time for question before we share with you just a feedback to give us some feedback for our next session and to tell you what's coming next. Well, I do want to formally thank you both so much, and thank you all for joining us at FI Connects this afternoon.